On a windy morning in the spring of 1944, the air over the English Channel carried more than just salt. It carried fear, anticipation, and the deep, vibrating hum of engines preparing for war. If you stood on the cliffs of Pas-de-Calais, you would have seen what looked like an immense invasion force ready to strike at the narrowest point of the channel. But what you saw was not what was there. The greatest invasion in history wasn't launched by steel alone, but by a lie so vast it fooled a tyrant and changed the course of the world. This is the story of Operation Fortitude, the beautiful, terrifying deception that saved millions of lives. In the quiet, underground war rooms of London, strategists with tired eyes and ink-stained fingers stared at maps of a bleeding Europe. They knew a critical truth about the German High Command. They were obsessed with logic, and logically, the shortest crossing, the Pas-de-Calais, was the only rational place for an invasion. So, the Allies decided to give the Germans exactly what their logic demanded. They created the First United States Army Group, or FUTSAG, a massive phantom force commanded by the one general the Germans feared most, George S. Patton. But this army was made of ghosts. Imagine being a German reconnaissance pilot flying over East Anglia. Below you see what looks like an entire tank division, Sherman tanks, fuel depots, anti-aircraft guns gleaming in the sun. You report back, the invasion is coming to Calais. What you don't know is that those tanks are giant inflatable balloons. The trucks are just wooden frames covered in canvas. The camps are silent, with no soldiers, only the sound of canvas flapping in the wind. Operation Fortitude wasn't just about telling a lie. It was about whispering to the enemy the very thing they were already terrified was true. The deception was a symphony of illusions. It needed more than just rubber tanks. It needed a pulse. So, the Allies created a phantom army on the radio waves. Operators in hidden shacks tapped out thousands of coded messages, logistical problems, requests for supplies, even fake weather reports for an army that didn't exist. They created a constant stream of chatter that convinced German listening posts that 500,000 men were preparing to storm Calais. They even placed fake death notices in local papers for soldiers who had never been born and organized imaginary football matches between non-existent divisions. But the most critical part of this elaborate hoax was a single man, a double agent codenamed Garbo. Juan Pujol Garcia was a Spanish national who had managed to become the Germans' most trusted intelligence source in Britain. Working with MI5, he created a network of 27 fictional subagents. He fed the Germans a steady diet of information, 90% truth, mixed with 10% deadly deception. He confirmed the existence of Patton's ghost army and reinforced the belief that any attack elsewhere would just be a diversion. The entire plan balanced on a knife's edge. One mistake, one slip-up, and the trap would have snapped shut on the Allies. As May turned to June, the tension in England was electric. In the real embarkation ports in the south, the harbors were choked with real ships and real men. Young soldiers from America, Britain, and Canada checked their rifles, unaware that their lives depended on a massive bluff hundreds of miles away. General Eisenhower, the weight of the world on his shoulders, paced in his trailer. In his pocket he carried a note he had written in case of failure, taking full responsibility for the disaster. He was gambling the future of the free world on the hope that a dictator would keep his eyes fixed on a phantom army while the real blow landed elsewhere. The night of June 5th, the deception reached its peak. As the true armada of over 5,000 ships began to move towards Normandy, a different kind of attack was launched towards Calais. RAF bombers dropped strips of tinfoil, codenamed Window, which created the illusion of a massive fleet on German radar screens. Special forces deployed floating devices that mimicked the sound of an approaching naval force, and all along the French coast, dummy paratroopers filled with firecrackers were dropped to create chaos and confusion, drawing German attention away from the real landing zones. Then, at dawn on June 6th, the ramps fell on the beaches of Normandy. The Atlantic Wall, which Hitler had boasted was impenetrable, unleashed a storm of fire and steel. On beaches codenamed Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juno, and Sword, the sea turned red. The first waves of Allied soldiers faced a relentless, mechanical slaughter. It was a scene of pure horror, where the courage of young men was pitted against machine guns and artillery. Yet even as the carnage unfolded in Normandy, the lie held firm. Hitler himself was asleep, and no one dared to wake him. His commanders, convinced of their own intelligence, hesitated. Even as reports of the Normandy landings poured in, they believed it was a feint. The powerful 15th Army, with its elite Panzer divisions, sat idle in the Pas-de-Calais, waiting for Patton's ghost army to make the real attack. The deception was so brilliant that it survived contact with reality. The Germans chose to believe the ghost they had been sold over the dying screams of their own soldiers. For weeks after D-Day, as the Allies fought and bled for every inch of French soil, Hitler's best divisions remained frozen in place, paralyzed by the fear of a phantom. Agent Garbo even sent a message to his German handlers, apologizing for being late, with the news of the Normandy landings but insisting that the main thrust at Calais was still imminent. The Germans thanked him. They even awarded him their highest honor, the Iron Cross. They fell for the lie completely. By the time the German High Command realized the truth, it was too late. The Allied beachhead was secure, and the push into Europe was unstoppable. The men who died in the first brutal minutes on Omaha Beach paid the ultimate price to keep that lie alive. Their sacrifice was the anchor that allowed the deception to work. We rightly honor the soldiers who charged the beaches, but we must also remember the men in the shadows who spun the tales, the ghosts in the fields, and the incredible power of a secret well kept. Today, the rubber tanks are long gone, rotted away or used as firewood. The men of the Double Cross Committee, who orchestrated the deception, returned to their quiet lives and rarely spoke of what they had done. On the beaches of Normandy, the grass grows green over the bunkers, and the sea washes ashore, indifferent to the dramas of history. The war was won by those who understood that sometimes the most powerful weapon is not a gun, but a story. It's a chilling reminder that resistance isn't always a heroic charge. Sometimes it's a patient, brilliant lie told to defeat a greater evil.